Love this podcast? Support us by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Hit the link in the episode description to support us now. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
All right, cool. Let's see. The Oscars. The nominations just recently came out, and we covered 3 films that were remakes, reboots, or revivals. Actually,
We covered 3?
we covered 3: Nightmare Alley, West Side Story, Dune. But
Oh, right. Yeah.
there's actually a 4th.
Well,
And so there are 4 film remakes, reboots, or revivals, mostly remakes, that are nominated for the Academy Award. So we couldn't leave this last one out, guys, because it's actually it's a bit of a sleeper. And this week we're going to be talking about Coda. And did you know that it's based on a French film from 2014 called The Bélier Family?
you're making it seem like we do this all along, but we just found out literally while we were planning this week.
I know. I'm saying it like, did you know? Because we literally just found out.
We didn't know until we saw the movie and we were just like, no way, this is a remake. Who knew?
Who knew? Well, now we know and climb on board because you're going to know all about it too. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rolando.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals.
An original podcast
About
unoriginality.
So before we get into it, as always, if you love and support this podcast, then show us your support by reaching out any of your platforms that you listen to and just give us a rating and a little review. Or you can reach out via email. And just this week, we actually got an email from one of our actually favorite people to hear from. And I just wanted to read a little bit of that email for you guys now.
I just want to point out that this listener usually praises me and agrees with me. However, this one time we do not see eye to eye, apparently.
Yeah. And how devastated were you about that, Rolando?
Very, because I felt like my opinion was law.
Okay. Just about had to sign into our Gmail. So, oh, hey, kitty. All right, here we go. So this is from Paul. And he says, "Dear gang at Triple R, thanks for a super show, and thank you for the compliment. But I'm afraid that I'm going to have to agree with Nicole on this one. As a longtime reader of Agatha Christie, I was very excited when they announced that Kenneth Branagh was going to revive Poirot in a new Murder on the Orient Express. I just love his work, especially his Shakespeare movies. But when I saw the movie, I was so disappointed. He had moved his characterization so far away from Christie that it just didn't ring true for the character of Poirot. Poirot is not an action hero. He is the master of little gray cells. He doesn't chase the bad guy under railroad bridges." So I just want to point out that one of our listeners thinks I'm right and Rolando's wrong. And we appreciate the email, Paul, and everyone else. Keep them coming because we just love the feedback. Also, he corrected me because I said there was only 3 Peter Ustinov movies, but there were 3 movies and TV movies. He continued on.
Wow. Look at that. So you got your comeuppance too.
Yeah, I did too, actually. Yes, he didn't leave me out. Moving on, though. As always, we're joined by Eddie.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Eddie.
And this week, this feels like a little bit of kismet because we were going to do like a one-off. Maybe we were going to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what everyone's watching right now on Netflix, and what I was kind of looking forward to. What are we going to do? Let's just do a one-off. I am just so happened to watch Coda. I was reading about it, saw that there was a French film, and I reached out to the boys, and I was like, "Boys, did you know about this?" And they're like, "Oh my God, we just watched it too. Let's cover it." It pretty much happened like that, right, guys?
Yeah. I mean, that's literally what happened.
Yeah.
Like, Eddie was going to pick Coda for Movie Club, but we ended up just watching it ourselves. Movie Club be damned. And, next thing I know, like a couple days later, I think maybe the next day,
Yeah,
you were
the next
texting
day.
us? It was the next day. It's just like, were you aware that Coda is a remake? And we were like, what? There's just no originality in Hollywood. It just is not. No other way to say it.
Well, it's interesting too because translating films in other languages has been a thing for a very long time. I feel like like The Departed is a movie that, another like that won the best picture in 2016. I think it's the only other than Ben-Hur film remake that ever won best picture. But it's like we've been doing it for so long, but it's always such a bummer kind of to like see a film that you thought was original and then realizing, oh no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but we'll get a little bit into that. The stories are so similar that I thought we could approach this like we did with like Nightmare Alley, where we just kind of talk about the stories and then we bring up, both versions.
Sure.
Because they really, I mean, like when we say remake, sometimes shot for shot.
It is a remake. I think one is a more elevated version of the other. And I think, they're both, the basic story of them are the same. Do you want me to go right into the story, or do you want to go into some history first?
Oh, no. I mean, I think we should just go into the story. There's not so much history, In 2014, a movie was made, and they decided to remake it in 2021. Bam, history.
7 years later.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I no disrespect. I know there's much more here, but I kind of just want to focus on these films and these stories this week.
So the basic plot line of both these films is a high school girl is the daughter to a deaf family, a working class deaf family. I think that's important to mention. And this girl is kind of caught in the middle of trying to live her own life and pursue her passions, while at the same time feeling obligated to help her family that is deaf. And in the process, she ends up joining a choir and discovers that she has a natural talent when it comes to singing. And this clashes with the family because the family is trying to start a new chapter in their lives that doesn't involve whatever working class job they have. And as a result, they butt heads, and she has to basically choose between her passion and her family. And she goes on to choose her family at first, but when the family sees how talented she is, they urge her to pursue her dreams, and she ends up either going to school or college for singing, because that turned out to be her passion. And I think the irony there, of course, is that, of course, the daughter of a deaf family would be a great singer,
Yes, it makes for good drama for sure.
It truly does.
You really just summed that whole movie up in like 2 minutes.
Thank you. And you know what?
You went for it. Yeah.
It's so rare when I can do that, right? I didn't go into like little subplots, because I think the American version has more subplots than the French version, but there are subplots in both films.
This is true. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit then, let's start from the beginning while we compare and contrast these characters of the two different versions. So like Rolando said, it's about a teenage girl in high school. In the French version, in the Bélier family, her name is Paula, and she's played by Louanne Emera. In the American version, Coda, her name is Ruby, and she's played by Emilia Jones.
And that reminds me, do you know what Coda stands for?
Yes. It stands for child of deaf adults.
Yes, child or children of deaf adults.
Yes.
I didn't know that until I Googled it. I was like, what the fuck is Coda? Like, I don't understand how it connects to this movie. And it's just like, oh, there it is. Duh.
Yeah.
Not an acronym I've heard that much. But I find it fascinating that we have an acronym for that, because I guess that's a more persistent problem than, not problem, but, a persistent thing that happens, I guess.
I can't really speak to that. This is
I know. I remember last year I saw a Google commercial where the whole premise around it was he is a child of deaf adults, and he communicates with during the pandemic with I think maybe it was a Facebook commercial, but like whatever device they're talking about, like the one where you see with your camera, either Google Hangouts or Facebook, that device, Facebook portal. One of those two. But I remember, and that's where I remember that is the first time I heard Coda, but it didn't stick to my brain.
Didn't register. Yeah.
And it's interesting, though, that Coda also has a musical meaning.
Oh, does it?
Too.
Oh.
It's usually like the addition or the end of a piece. It's like the ending of a piece that adds something to the basic structure.
Oh, I didn't know that. All right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is actually. Wow. And yeah, I love that. So in the French film, Paula, she is the daughter of a working class family, and they own a farm. They own a cow farm, and I assume that their main product is dairy.
It seemed like
Uh,
they were cheese makers.
yeah, I think cheese.
Yeah.
Whereas in Coda, instead of that, they're in New England. So their main product is fish, I suppose, or
Right.
sea creatures. I shouldn't just say fish. I'm not sure completely, but
I
they own
mean,
a boat. They
that's-
go out,
okay.
they capture fish like
Yeah.
live catches, and they sell it. And they must have some sort of relationship with the docks because it's like they have to give it a percentage to the people who sell it for them.
Right. So they sell it. I think they sell it wholesale to the fishmongers, and then they probably distribute it.
Fishmongers. That sounds like such an insult. I love it.
I love the word fishmonger.
Yeah,
And
it's a good
they are
one.
so hard to come by, and I need to find a good fishmonger because if you want to make good ceviche, which is a Peruvian dish,
Ooh.
fish that's cooked in like citrus juices,
Mhm.
you need to find a good fishmonger you can trust, and I have yet to find one. So if
Wow, look at
if
that.
you're out there, hit me up.
And this is how she starts her day. She is like we said, she's the only one who can speak, and she's kind of like their translator. So she starts the day with them. In the American film too, it's even more apparent that she needs to be there because they're on a boat, so they need someone who can hear and who can be kind of like the middleman in between things.
Mm-hmm.
And then after waking up at like 4 a.m. doing this job, she has
3
to
a.m.
run on over. It's like 3 a.m. Not even. She has to run on over to school, right?
I know,
And
what a
both-
life.
What a life. And both films show that it is exhausting for her.
Yeah.
Immediately, we see that this kind of almost double life, not in a negative way, but she's living two different lives, is taking a toll on her. Immediately, we see that she's exhausted in both films. And in both films, we immediately see that she has a love of music, right? She's always singing. A big difference, though, then occurs when we kind of get into the school life. Paula is kind of just she's there. She's not really like the major outcast at school, and she doesn't have like a lot of people who target her in terms of bullying, whereas Ruby does, which actually kind of struck me as surprising, I suppose, because I've spoken with younger kids, and I know some younger kids who said that bullying isn't as much of an issue as it was, say, in my generation, right? Because of these whole anti-bullying acts and whatnot.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Well, how young are you talking about?
Like 17.
Oh, I don't. I feel like maybe they're lying because I think the
Why would
suicide,
they lie?
because the suicide rates are like I think higher in.
I'm not saying that who I spoke to can speak for everyone, but
I
it's
know.
also, I feel like the anti-bullying movement has had to have had somewhat of an impact on our culture.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I watch Euphoria and they say otherwise.
Oh, here we go.
So, but it's interesting
It's a
because
conspiracy. They're covering up for all the other bullies. Maybe she's
Yeah,
the bully,
so-
and that's what she's covering.
I'm in my 30s. I haven't been in high school for a while, but like, it seems like according to this movie, bullying and targeting people. It's also like we live in a culture now where you don't really target people with like insensitivities, like cultural insensitivities. So that was also like, what is this, like 1995? Is this when this takes place? Because I feel like, I don't know. That was just hard for me to believe. But nonetheless, she is definitely an outcast in the American version and is definitely bothered almost by it. Like people immediately just, make fun of her for smelling like fish the moment she gets to school.
Well, yeah.
And the way she talked, because, when she first learned to speak,
Uh-huh.
when she was raised by deaf people, it affected her speech, right?
Right. That all makes sense, actually, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe we're using the word. I don't know. Maybe she wasn't bullied, per se.
I mean, if
Targeted
if we-
teasing.
If we look at it as made fun of,
Yeah.
because which I also think is an element of bullying.
Yeah.
But in the sense of that she kind of what was made fun of by the way, her speech, when she was young,
Ostracized.
and probably, I mean, very much you get the sense that she's not from a rich family,
Mm-hmm.
like right away compared to the other kids and the way they would dress or the way she holds herself too was very, she has this like this slouch, like she kind of like, she has this kind of, she kind of like closes herself up. She has this like body language of always in defense,
Mm-hmm.
protecting her heart, protecting herself. yeah, and the French one, it didn't seem like everyone seemed to be like in the same class. Like the way everyone dressed was the same, like the same kind of style. Everyone looked like no one was like more fashion than anybody else. Everyone just kind of looked,
I know what you're.
kind of the same.
Yeah, Gossip Girl. This was not.
Everyone, and so I didn't get a sense of like in the French one that she was like a target in school at all. I almost got. I mean, even the feel of this movie, the French one, was like, it's like a little Hallmarky. I had like this, like it's like this like a Hallmark movie.
Yeah,
the colors and just the feel of it seemed like, oh, this is like a Hallmark movie.
I mean, the beginning of it was way happier than the beginning of Coda. Like Coda, I'm not saying that Coda is a depressing movie. I think it's not. It's a feel goodery film, but it does start off a lot more not as like sunshiny day as the French one did, right?
Well, because Coda kind of takes a different direction. Coda immediately kind of sets up this character who, it makes the odds that she feels, or the difference, like she kind of feels isolated in both worlds. Like she kind of feels isolated at home because she can hear, but she also feels isolated at school, whereas that's not actually an issue for Paula in the French version, right? So the issues that ring up aren't like this whole internal, almost borderline existential thing. It's more so just like a kind of her quest later on in the film. The American film almost like immediately makes it seem like she's not okay with her identity, whereas she's totally fine with her life and her situation in the French film.
Do you know what that's called in screenwriting?
Conflict.
Yeah, that's basically what they were introducing right from the get-go. Conflict between conflict in our main character, which I think on some level
it was a little heavy-handed.
I mean,
so?
Yeah, I don't know if it was that heavy-handed because
I thought so.
I mean, considering how much shit she has to go through by the end, I'm just like, that is the least of her problems, to be quite honest.
Yeah, okay. So that's the thing. Along the way, too, things happen. The first thing that kind of happens is that because she likes to sing, and she has this crush on this boy, her and her one friend decide to join the choir.
Right.
And there is also a difference there, in the French film, she's totally cool with like performing to an extent until she like really lets it out, and then she gets embarrassed and runs away. But in the American film, again, when she's put on the spot, oh my God, no, I got to go and hide.
Yeah.
So she's definitely got a lot of insecurities and stuff.
Also pretty bold of the teacher to put her to like.
Well, the teacher is different. The teacher is almost like this, like stereotypical artsy, like almost like a ballet instructor. It's like, you must dance the ballet and you must dance it well. Like it's such a stereotype of an artistic teacher who's just like always trying to push you. The American one, the French one, not so much.
Oh, okay.
I feel like,
I'm gonna smoke a cigarette. My life.
Well, that's so surprising because you would expect the French film to be more like. He would be more out there and theatrical, and yet it was the American one.
Right, but because the French guy hated where he was. That's the major difference between the two characters.
Yeah,
the French guy, French guy definitely thought he was meant for better things, but this is where I don't know how they do things in France, but he said the people who assigned teachers
assigned him there,
and he has another 2 years left in that school. Right?
Before he kills himself,
And in the American version, like he chose to be there. He chooses to be there to help out this community in his own way.
Well, I guess that's what makes him then, is because he chose to be there. I mean, they just made him very theatrical and stuff. It's fine. I mean, I actually liked the character, but it was also like, okay, is this are teachers really allowed to do this these days? But it's so interesting too, because so immediately everything gets heightened in the American film, which is kind of surprising because you would think that the European film would be more heightened because
I agree,
more inclined to go that way. But reversals, right?
Well, also, Americans love drama.
Yeah, so she's not okay with her voice. Now they both have very, very nice voices, but the way that the teacher finds out that she's talented in both films is quite different, and I found one to be a little bit more believable than the other.
What?
And I'm just wondering which ones you guys felt, because again, there's a moment where the teacher's like, oh, you have a talent. I'm going to offer my time to help you with your talent, right? Where we're also supposed to find out, oh, not only, like, she could sing, and she could sing really well. There's
You're
like a
talking
moment in both films where that happens.
You're talking about when this girl, the French one, she starts like belting it out, and then everyone just starts looking at her.
Yeah, like overshines everybody.
I hated that one.
You hate
You know why? Because I was just like, ew, I hate when people show off in class. And she's showing off. She's showing off.
I guess
She's
so.
showing
I mean,
off by going all like just.
but if
singing.
she's, why not? If you got it flaunted.
She thinks she's Nicole Scherzinger in the Pussycat Dolls. That's who she's pretending to be right there, and it's annoying.
Is that why you don't like to go to karaoke with me? Because I'm an amazing singer.
No, first of all, please, I wiped the floor with you, so that's first and foremost. The only one who had me actually, who was a better performer, was the other gay guy in the group, but that's because he actually did a song and dance. I don't dance.
But yeah, so this whole thing is like a big subplot for her, is that she has this teacher who is encouraging her to leave her home and to go to a school, whether, you know, in the French film it's Paris, but in the American film it's Boston.
Boston.
And what was the name of that college again? Berkeley, the famous Berkeley College of Music, right? Which is also like going for the gold. Good for you. Because I know Berkeley. I don't know the school in Paris, but I know of Berkeley, and it's pretty well-known music school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's up there with like Juilliard and stuff.
Excuse you, William Patterson has one of the finest jazz programs in the nation. That's not even me being. That's not even me poking fun. Like, that's a straight up fact.
No, actually, NJCU also has a pretty good jazz program.
Yeah,
so.
Jersey represent.
Hell yeah! I mean, hey, we're right across New York, so
that's right.
Obviously. Yeah, but so while this is kind of going on, the whole tension at home is happening, and enter her family. Again, she is a coda, a child of deaf adults, but she also has a sibling who just so happens to be deaf. Mm-hmm. In the French film, her brother is younger than her.
Yes.
In the American film, I'm pretty sure he's older than her.
No, he is. He's definitely older. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a plot point.
Yeah, I don't know by how much, because I hope not by much, but
like a couple of years maybe. Oh, because maybe. he's fornicating with her friend.
Yeah,
but they're seniors, so they're probably like 17, 18. They're fine.
I guess so. But yeah, so in the French film, the brother's kind of just there. He doesn't really play a major, like, doesn't add too much to like any of the conflict in the story. He doesn't have his own side story other than the one night he spends with Paula's best friend. But he has way more
a latex allergy.
Yes, gets a latex allergy, which is actually funny. And then, but in the American film, the brother gets a whole different arc.
Yes, he has a major subplot. So his major subplot is Leo. That he is he's the older brother, so he feels that he should have the responsibilities that have been placed on his sister. Mm-hmm. Right? He feels that he should be the caretaker of the family, right? He also has this plan because the government is now intervening with the fishing market, and so he decides to gather all the fishermen or fisher ladies. I think I only saw men, but fisher people, to start a co-op. And as a result, the family tries to start this co-op that is becoming a new business for them. And they're looking for it as a way to kind of thrive in this kind of diminishing market. Because as we know, without saying it, they're saying it, it's about global warming, and our overindulgence of fish markets has kind of like led to like less of a population. And so the government now has to intervene by saying, it's like, all right, well, you can't fish that deep. Fishermen are saying, it's like, you don't know what it's like out there, right? Which is, I think it was, true. This is kind of the problem we're having with the world right now, right? You have the working class to see government intervention as a bad thing, despite the fact that, the government is intervening for the betterment of the world. However, it is interfering with the daily lives of these people. And one of their solutions is to start a co-op. So he just trying to be he wants to be the man for the family that they could depend on, right? But he's kind of jealous of his sister because she, as the connection between their world and the hearing world, has just more, not more to offer per se, but that's how he sees it.
Yeah.
And and then he's
absolutely.
also banging her friend.
Yes, and yes.
That's not really a subplot per se, but he does find love in a
But
Well,
hopeless place.
There's more to it.
there's almost like he's kind of dealing with his own, not like denial, because there's like this one scene where he's like, I can do it. I could go read lips, and yeah, I'm going to go have a beer with the guys.
Yeah.
And then he goes, he can't really catch up so much with the lips, but he gets so aggravated that he starts a fight.
Yeah.
And and he definitely, like, it seems like it's this tension that's building up where it's just like he wants so much to fill this role, and like everyone's kind of putting these blockades in him simply because of his status as a deaf person. And it's actually I loved this element to this film because of like, it just puts you in the perspective. What both films do pretty well, but I really liked what this story is putting you in the perspective of somebody like that, of somebody who is at kind of like odds in the world that they live with, and who wants a better future for themselves, or who wants so much and yet can't seem to get it for all these other reasons other than themselves, which must be so frustrating.
Yeah.
And really sad. It was really heartbreaking.
Yeah. Plus, he's super handsome.
He's very handsome and a great actor. I thought he was a great actor too.
Oh yeah, the performances in this movie are all top notch, and they're just actors as far as I'm concerned. But like, the big thing about Coda is that all the actors who are deaf, so they're not playing deaf;
which
they are
is
themselves deaf, and that's
in contrast to the French film.
the French version. Yes.
Yes, yeah, gained a lot of controversy because of that. In the French film, the parents are played by Karine Viard and Francois Damian, and they can hear. They can speak. So,
and apparently, Eddie, while doing his research, said that French sign language, the French deaf community felt that their performances were inauthentic and they overacted. Which, even though I don't understand, like, for example, sign language, I could see that argument of like, yeah, it does look at times that they were just acting like overacting on the hand gestures.
Yeah, I will say in particular, Karine Viard's performance, and I hope I'm saying her name right, but as the mother in the French film, I did think was a little over the top-ish.
I agree.
I tend to be okay with over the top if the role kind of calls for it or is theatrical, but you're playing a working class mother and you're a hearing person who's playing deaf, and one of the criticisms was that a lot of people thought that the portrayal of the parents being deaf actually played more for comedy.
Which I don't know. That I don't know if it's necessarily true, because I don't know how. Sometimes
I think, didn't you see that?
Not as much as like I think to like
very much
argue about it.
Well, so there's a big sequence difference between the two films, which is interesting in the ways that they decided to change this moment. But it's one, the parents like to have sex with each other, which is great. After 20 years of being together, these parents like to fuck, and that's awesome. But they can't at the moment. They're not supposed to, because
there's a rash.
There's a rash, and it could be bad. But they can't keep their hands off each other.
And
the French, yes, and in the French film, she's just hanging with her friends, and she's hanging with her one friend, hears them having sex, and then they just they laugh it off.
They giggle.
Yeah. But in the American film, it just so happens to be when Ruby has her crush over.
Right.
That they hear this, and then they have this whole awkward interaction with the boyfriend. Now, in the French film, the awkward interaction that she has with her crush that, she gets made fun of is when she gets her period.
Yeah, so she gets her period for the first time. Her mom is super excited for her.
And parades her
bloody jeans.
And does that. And I felt 100% that was going for comedy, and I felt like it was not very effective, because I was like, I don't believe that she would just do that. Like, I don't think it's a matter of, like, she's deaf, she didn't know someone was there. I don't think she would go and show her daughter's fucking blood to her whole family. Like, that just doesn't feel like something a woman would do.
I don't know what the French customs are, but in America, we don't do that. you know, no, I actually, so I thought that bit was, I laughed at the situation of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I agree, like it's not. It is a little bit lowbrow humor, which is not what I was expecting for a French film, and I don't see many French films. Let me tell you, know.
Well, I will. This is not the standard that the French cinema should be held to. I'll say that much right now.
But
I will say though, that was a way more valid reason for the girl Paula to be upset at her crush, I think, because like, why are you telling people about this story that's embarrassing. He definitely deserved like a smack across the face.
yo, that was a big smack too.
Yeah, whereas in the American film, it's almost like they wanted there to be this conflict, but they also didn't want us to not like the character.
Yeah,
Or to like kind of, he didn't actually mean to. So they kind of gave him a pass where it's like, oh, I just told this one person and then she told this person about the story and I thought it was, cute.
Well, yeah, but even then though, like she's already. It doesn't. So it doesn't matter how innocent the story was, right? She's already feeling like the target of jokes. So like, if they're gonna weaponize it, regardless of how malicious the story is, it doesn't matter. Like, it's still ammunition that they're using against her. So she had every right to be mad. And
that girl was a see you next Tuesday.
She was, but it's also like, I don't know. That seemed super high school. I used to be sometimes that person. So
I actually believe it.
Oh yeah. There's stories, But I was also sometimes the target of bullying. So like, you play the cards you're dealt. Anyway, but I actually found the interaction though between the parents in the American version and her crush to be better, only because like the comedy came from their over concern, their love of her, right? Like it's just like, are you using protection? You make sure you use protection. They're just being protective parents, but they're also still. I think it was interesting because like they're very sex positive, right? They're ready for her to be a woman. They just want her to be safe.
Yeah.
And I think as any teenager I think would be mortified of having that conversation with like your paramour and your parents, you know what I mean? I am in my mid 30s, and if my mother had that conversation with me and Eddie, I would be mortified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a feeling we could all relate to.
Absolutely. And now's a good time to mention the parents are played by Troy Kotzer and Marlee Matlin, who I think might be probably the most famous deaf actor in America, at least. Marlee Matlin won an Oscar for a performance in a film called Children of a Lesser God in 1986. I think as far as I know, the only deaf actor to win. And I mean, she's been in everything. She's been in The L Word. I think she's been like Law and Order. She's been on Seinfeld.
The Magicians.
I mean, she is a working fucking actress. It's great to see her in a movie, and it's great to see her playing such a role too, because like both mothers are not as understanding as they should be of the situation that their daughters are in, but Marlee Matlin really plays that up. Well, I was just going to say Ruby's position kind of as the middleman between them and the outside world, and how much weight they put on her, how much responsibility is on her shoulders. The parents, especially, I felt like the mother doesn't get it right away.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's such a conflict too, when like one of my favorite things in like movies about parents and their children is when it's so clear to you when something's wrong and like in a dynamic and the character's just not getting it, because that's one of the most real things in all human relationships. Like we look at a bunch of people and we see things so clearly, but the people who are in it, they're never able to see it clearly.
Like in Encanto.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Well, yeah, like the grandma, right? Like how.
There you go. Okay, well, like in Ordinary People, where it's like, just fucking hug your son, but why can't, like, that's all you got to do. Just hug your son. Why can't you just take a picture with your son?
Yeah.
But and where she doesn't realize it, and she thinks that the son's a fucking playing the victim. So it's interesting because in this, it's like, well, we need you. Like your family needs you. Your family's in a moment of crisis, but it's also like, you just want to yell at her. And that's when a movie does it effectively, where it's like, she's 16. She has her own life. Don't you realize the stress that you're putting on her?
Well, I will say this. I think in the French one, the mom comes off a lot more selfish and colder.
Okay. Yeah.
Than in the American one, because in the so there's a monologue that both moms have, in which they tell their daughter that they do wish they were blind, right? But I think they're both handled very different. Deaf. I'm sorry, deaf. And they're both handled very differently. I think in the French one, the mom comes off super selfish by the end of that scene. And I kind of felt like, God, like I don't like the parents in this one, as opposed to the American one, where that scene came off a lot more sweet, because even though she does tell her daughter, I do wish when you were born, like I was so sad when you were not deaf, but there's a connection there that she's able to make. It's not she was just afraid that they would not connect, and there was just a lot more tenderness in the way they just played out those scenes, that I don't think I was shocked that the French one just didn't have.
Well, that's interesting. I did not feel like she was selfish. Again, I felt like every moment was played a little bit more comedically, whereas in Coda it was played very more dramedy-ish, where it was balancing that line between drama and comedy. But I think because of that, she just didn't come off right in the French film, whereas you actually had this tender moment with the Marlee Matlin one.
Yeah, I guess maybe because like the mom was making it very clear that like they need you and we need you, and you can't like step out of this world. Like we need you. It was kind of that. She put that heaviness on her daughter, where I don't like that heaviness didn't appear in the American one. It was kind of maybe a little bit coded there, but like the takeaway from that one is that we love each other. Like there was love in that family. You can't. I could definitely see the argument that like in the American one, like despite their disagreements, there is pure love in this one. In the French one, I between the mom and the daughter, not so much. The father, yeah. I think the father and her daughter for sure have that love, but not necessarily the mom.
What about in the American one, where they're there, the TV crew's coming, but Ruby's already been told that if she doesn't get on time for her next vocal session, that's it for her.
Right.
And the mother's like, where are you going? The TV crew's here. She's like, Ma, I told you I have to go. Like, this is important to me. It's like, yeah, but like that tension between them in that scene, she's like, they're really right there. Like, we need you. Like, I felt that scene to be actually one of the heaviest scenes, because you actually felt the anxiety where it's like, oh my gosh, like the two major decisions that she has to come to. And how intense that teacher is. Like, he's never letting her step foot in his house again. By the way, do you think he was gay?
Who, the teacher?
Yeah.
No, but but I guess
I thought he was.
I didn't get any gay vibes.
Oh, I thought he was. And
I've seen him in other things, and I do like him. He just maybe a little flamboyant, but I don't think
I don't know. I thought it was a really nice portrayal of a gay father.
Now I kind of hope it was, but I didn't read it as such.
Oh well,
but I agree with you, and I think again that scene on both movies relatable, because I think a lot of us have been in those situations where we have to pick between our friends and our family, right? Now, granted, this is like for her, it's about like her future, if she wants to pursue it or not. In this one, it's very much, but I've been there. I've been like, having, it's just like, oh, I want to go out and have fun and do something of my own. And then your mom is just like, well, I need you here to do this because you speak English fluently and I don't. And so I've had to like sometimes make sacrifices in that sense. I am.
Don't.
Let's just stop right there. So I think the emotional kind of like peak of this film comes when the recital happens in both films. The whole family goes and shows up to support her because she tells them, oh, we've been in choir. Even though the mom's like, why are you in choir? Why would you do that singing? And there's actually, now that I think about it, there's this weird scene at the dinner table with Marlee Matlin. She's like singing. She almost like makes this thing like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
That scene I felt was a little much, but because it was also like, why is she so insecure about her own thing? Maybe this is why. This is the only reason why I could think of why that scene existed.
I think it's part of that thing where the mom is very much, she has this anxiety that like she'll never be able to be on the same wavelength as her daughter. The singing just adds to that.
It's not the wavelength; it's connecting.
Yeah,
she's not trying to be her daughter's best friend. She wants to make sure that she's a good mom.
Yes, I agree with you. But I think part of that, though, is just like she feels like singing is almost like an act of defiance, right? She said,
Yeah.
of course you pick the talent that like your family cannot connect with, right?
But
you
she
couldn't
didn't say that.
She does. She actually
I
signed
thi-
that. Let's just
I
say,
think
no,
she
no,
did say that.
it's like
You
you
just
couldn't-
made an analogy.
She- it's like you
if
couldn't
we
do
were
painting?
blind, would you be a painter?
Exactly. Yes.
You know,
Oh,
that kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
And it's more, and her expression was more. I mean, yeah, it was kind of heavy. It was like, damn, mom. You know, it was like the sense of like, not you're like, oh, I guess, you know, like, not really caring. Like, I guess if you want to waste your time that way, you know, that kind of expression, and not being able to appreciate that. But that's like, they never heard their daughter sing,
Mhm.
you know, and we don't get the moment. I saw this movie twice, so
He loved it.
in the second scene. In the second time around, I kind of like the scene when she is singing, she's doing the duet, and you know when it goes quiet,
Yeah, when we get their point of view
when
shot.
you get their point of view, and it's like they are noticing how people are reacting to their daughter singing,
Right.
and it's that moment that it clicks, you know. They
Yeah.
notice how their daughter is affecting others
Mm-hmm.
in the world, and they're seeing their daughter as separate from them, not part of the family unit, not the interpreter of the family, but her own person with this talent that they may not at this point. Let's be real, they may not understand, but they can see how it is impacting
Mm-hmm.
those
Yeah.
that can hear her.
So yeah, that's and yeah. So like I said, we reach an emotional impact and like peak of the movie with this, and with this exact scene. And it's interesting how differently it plays. Like I was almost wondering when I was watching the French film, like, is this something that we thought of? And I was hoping that the American
Oh, me too. That's so
had
funny,
that
right?
like
The
unique
si-
to
the,
us.
The dead silent part.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
but
yet,
the American film plays it way more effectively, I think.
I agree. I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
I didn't understand I was looking for it in French, like
Yeah,
besides the besides like we can't, this is how we're experiencing this moment, right? This is how we're experiencing the moment. Besides getting that point of view, I didn't I didn't see what I saw in Coda.
Yeah.
yeah.
I would agree.
I will say, I mean, it was a little bit of the directions, but I'm gonna give it to the performances here because when it was really focused on Troy Kutzer, who's also nominated for an Academy Award
Mm-hmm.
for his performance. And we'll get to his other scene after this, but him kind of like, you see the longing of wanting to experience his daughter, and him like looking around and like just hoping that maybe he can get some of it on the glimpses that of other people's faces. It was actually kind of tragic. And
Yeah,
I got
no,
that
I agree.
purely from his performance.
Uh-huh.
And maybe it was the performance and maybe the French film it didn't linger enough in the shots or in the editing for us to feel that connection with the character. Whereas in the American film it did. And yeah.
I think the American one it started off with a point of view shot, right? I remember. I think it starts off with when we get to
I think
silence.
so.
I think it started with
yes,
a POV.
yes. And there's
then,
a focus pull.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
but it was so effective because
Mhm.
as soon as that happened, like you and I, we study film, so it's like we know what a simple trick, and yet it was so effective at this moment. They chose like the right moment to do this. I'm calling it a trick, but like filmmaking. And you're right, it just hits. And then when I saw the French, because we came to the French scene, I was just like, oh, I wonder if like the Americans just came up with that part by themselves. And like, oh no, there it is. I'm like, it hit differently.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't hit the same for some reason. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thought it was very effective. I also thought that the fact that like before that scene, they're like, "What do you want to have for dinner?" Like they're having that conversation while the recital is going on. I actually thought that was a really nice touch in the American one and that was a comedy moment that made a lot of sense because I'm like, they're probably bored out of their fucking minds sitting
It's
there.
true.
They can't experience it. So what are you gonna do? Well, let's talk about dinner. They're just kind of like sitting there like, yep, cool. So yeah, I thought that was overall really effective. But I think the real peak of this film, and definitely the reason why Troy Kutzer got an Academy Award nomination, is the scene when the daughter, in both films, the daughter and the father have this moment where he's like, I want you to sing your song for me that you sang. You know, I want to be able to experience it. And while she sings, he puts his hands on her throat, you know, on her face, so he can try and feel her voice, and he can get a glimpse of, he can almost like, it's the closest thing that he can to hear her sing. Fucking beautiful and just devastating of a moment. The French film, it plays it at a wide angle and it just stays on the moment, right?
Yes.
And she performs that really nice Michel Sardou or whatever song. The American film.
Do you know the singer?
I actually don't,
You're
but
the
I kind of
French
want to. No, I'm not. I'm an Anglophile.
Oh, I thought you also loved the French.
I mean, I appreciate their work, but I appreciate the works of many different cinemas.
Okay.
Where I said with my pinky out. The American film plays in close-ups.
Yes.
And it plays in shot reverse shot. Which is interesting because I usually tend to like when you just kind of like stay on a wide or you just stay on a one shot. But the shot reverse shot close-ups worked for me in the Coda, but also it was the performance by Troy.
That's why,
Kotzer.
and this is why. I mean, sometimes your camera, like, I don't disagree with you in terms of sometimes hold on the wide, but if your performance is that good, you have to focus on the wide, on the close up, because that's where you're gonna get your money shot, which is where you start welling up. You know?
Yeah, and I absolutely was like. I just thought it was so beautiful, and I really do think I'm rooting for him to get the Academy Award because I've seen all of the nominated performances for the Academy Award, and right now he's, to me, like the clear winner. Really quick, do you want to hear what they are? Okay, so the nominees for Best Supporting Actor are Ciarán Hinds for Belfast. He gave a very good performance. J.K. Simmons for Being the Ricardos, which to me is just so... I'm outraged by that.
Wait, who is he in Being the Ricardos?
He plays William Frawley, and William Frawley played Fred on I Love Lucy.
The neighbor?
Yeah.
What? They got Ethel's husband, right?
Ethel's husband, yes.
He played him?
He got fucking nominated. It's not worth it. Just wait till the Lucy and Desi documentary comes out in a week. I
told you, I had no desire in seeing Being the Ricardos because I don't want to see Nicole Kidman non-express.
Well, some people think she might get the Best Actress, which you get.
No way. That'll be a sin to Lucy and Desi are rolling in their graves.
I think so. This new documentary, I hope, will redeem, their everything in of media portrayals or something, and everyone will forget about Being the Ricardos. And yet, here we are. He's got a nomination. Anyway, I'm just gonna let that go for now. I'm just so outraged by it. But the other two performances are two performances from Power of the Dog. Have you seen Power of the Dog?
No.
What are you waiting
Netflix
for?
movie?
Yes. What are you fucking waiting for? It's one of the best movies of the year.
I don't wanna. I don't care.
Rolando.
I don't
trust. No, it's gonna go somewhere that's going to surprise you. And I actually think you're really going to like it.
I'm disappointed because I was rooting for Tick Tick Boom to get like a Best Picture nomination. I was gonna be ahead of the game, and it did not. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, or Best Directing. So my heart's been broken by Netflix on this
Here's
one.
hoping Andrew Garfield might take it, but I'm just gonna say this one last time. Trust me. There's gonna.
Is it a Western?
Goes in a direction. It is a Western, but it doesn't matter.
Oh God, no,
it goes
pass.
into
Hard pass.
No, it's not a Western in that sense. Trust me. Watch The Power of the Dog.
Maybe we'll see.
No, trust me, and watch Flea. By the way, watch Flea. You're gonna love it. Anyway. The last nominated performance for Best Supporting Actor is Troy Kotzer from Coda. Even though I'm over here saying, Rolando, watch Power of the Dog, and two of them are nominated, I want Troy Kotzer to win. I thought he gave the strongest performance, and he just absolutely moved me.
It was a strong performance. I'm surprised. Why do you think he got nominated for Best Supporting Actor? How did he not qualify for Best Actor? Considering he is like the predominant male role.
Well, that's a good question.
Unless you're counting the boyfriend, but the boyfriend, there's no way. Like, the boyfriend he didn't have nearly as much screen time as the father.
Yes, you're right about that. But I think that the predominant role here is just simply the girl.
Oh, I would agree. Yeah.
So I think everyone else is by default supporting. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
That would be my logic.
I was just curious. It's just like,
Yeah. But yeah, so I think those two scenes are just highly effective. And then, of course, both films, result in them being like what have we done? Well, in the French film, the teacher didn't even know that she was raised by deaf parents.
Yeah, she hid that. She
hid that.
from everybody.
But, the parents kind of didn't know about this whole like audition thing. So, in classic movie ticking clock plot thing, they're like, oh, we got to get you to the auditions. It's in an hour. Can we make it? And of course they make it. And again, this was a moment that I was,
at least
they can be late. Yeah. This was a moment again I was hoping that the Americans did, but they didn't. It was in the French film too, where when she has her audition, the parents they sneak in and they're present for it all the way up in the balcony. And so for her to be able to sing, but to have her family enjoy it, she signs while she sings.
They handled it a little bit better in the American one, because in the American one they weren't allowed, but they broke the rules to get up there.
Yes, they did. Well, which is also like,
how American.
I don't know. Anyone, how American. Well, then it also goes into this little montage and stuff.
I will admit, like, this movie kind of did sweep me a little bit off my feet. Like, I was just like, oh, this is it was so heartwarming, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I'm here for it. This is, like,
I agree.
This was, so, like, even the montage, because I agree with you. I tend to detest montages. I thought it was fine. It
got you? That's
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it got me as much as just like I just didn't. I'm hearing the moment, right? I'm hearing her sing that song by Bonnie
Joni
Raitt.
Mitchell. Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, Joni Mitchell's great.
Yeah, and
I think the only reason why it bothered me was because of one shot in particular, that whole like the whole family waiting by the computer shot, and then it's like, oh, we got it. Oh yeah, like I don't know. It's just like I've seen these shots done before. But it's whatever. I'm just one of those movie watchers.
Yeah.
I agree. I was swept up with this movie. It totally had me crying. I watched it with my mom, and the moment she started signing to both sides, now I could just, I heard my mom lost it, and I was like, oh my God, no, I'm gonna lose it. It was sweet. But I also thought that the French film was also, that moment was really, really sweet. However, now knowing that those actors were not, authentically playing their roles, and knowing how just over the top and comedic the mom in particular made it, it actually makes me kind of look differently at the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think, like, is this how you think deaf people act? Like, what the hell?
Right.
Like it kind of, it just isn't, it's not sitting right with me.
Well, I think this has come up a lot, maybe this side of the year, right? Where it's just like, when do performances kind of cross a line, right? Like who, or when does a joke at the expense of a subclass cross a line, right?
Yeah.
And I think we talked about it for Murderville when, in the English version, right? He was in drag, and the joke is a man in drag. That's the butt of the joke. That's where the center of comedy comes from. And it's just like, isn't that offensive if you dress in drag professionally, or if you if you cross-dress, if you're like transitioning, that kind of stuff, right? And we can excuse it maybe because it is a comedy and that is what it's for. Here, this movie is technically a comedy, right? However, it does seem like when they were overemphasizing some of the performances in the FSL, French Sign Language, it does seem over-exaggerated to the point where it almost seems like clownish. So it's just like, so where do we put, I don't know, who gets the onus, right? Is it intent to make the signing look silly, or is it just a bad performance?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when Mickey Rourke, not Mickey Rourke, goddammit, Mickey Rooney played...
I was to say, what did Mickey Rourke do now?
Yeah, with his portrayal of a Japanese man in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And he did it for comedy. Right? But does that allow what he did to pass and not be deemed offensive, especially because, he taped his eyes back, he put fake teeth in, all of that. This is an extreme.
We've deemed it, but I think we have, as a culture, deemed that offensive.
Oh, no, yeah. Everybody knows that that's offensive now. But that's the thing, too. It's like, sometimes people will be like, oh, well, it's for comedy. It's such a tricky line.
Right.
I think that, I guess in this performance, what she's trying to I don't think she's making fun of a non-deaf person playing a deaf person. I think she's trying to do an impression of a deaf person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If there was like some meta textual thing in there, then maybe I'd be a little bit more like, oh, I get what you're doing. But like essentially she's acting how she thinks deaf people act.
Yeah. So we can just attribute it to bad acting.
I think it might just be bad acting.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine. And that's totally
an
acceptable viewpoint, I think, right? Like, I think I don't know, that's it. I agree with you. I think it was just bad acting. I don't know if there was like intent to necessarily make fun of the deaf community,
Yeah. We don't know her intentions, obviously. Right. So, but yeah, I do think that I'm going to have to attribute it to just bad acting. And both films end with the family accepting that they have to, let her go, that they can't force her to live this life because it's almost like her giving up her life.
Mm-hmm.
Just being in the middle. And then they both end with her being driven away in a car and her watching them and then running out, hugging them one last time and getting back and starting her brand new life.
Well, actually, in the French one, it ends on a freeze frame on her running, and I was just like, "That's."
First of all, she had to run
awkward
a
freeze
long
frame.
way.
She did. That was such a long. That was like a
and they
long
didn't
way.
even
It was
meet her.
That was like a 5K.
I know. That was just like, girl, just turn the car around because it's like down the road kind of running, and then she has to run back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she doesn't walk. She just runs back, and then it ends like a Little House on the Prairie freeze frame.
I don't know.
Moment.
I loved it. I loved that ending. I was like,
oh,
yes,
did you?
freeze frame.
So ridiculous.
Yes.
As soon as it ended, me and Amy were just like, that's a weird ending. that was unusual.
Freeze frame is like so kitschy for me that I'm just for it.
I forgot to mention this, but in the French film, the family Bélier, they are running for the father is running for mayor. That's his story. That's his big story angle. Instead of trying to build that co-op, but
what happened to that?
I don't know if he won.
The story
fizzled.
Yeah,
well, kind of in both, didn't it? Right? Like we never really know what happens with the parents' business.
No,
either.
the company
in the montage. You see the business
thriving.
That's right. The benefit of a fucking montage, I guess. Huh?
It's the summer.
It wraps up. Yeah, it gives you just like
3 months. It gave you 3 months in 1 minute.
Crazy.
But what you do see in Coda in this montage thing is the family connecting to the community.
Yes.
Okay. The only deaf community that seemed to they connected with was each other. They were their own community. Your family is your first primary community, and then you build out from there. But that didn't happen for them. They just chose to be their own community, and they let whatever they fear of the outside world or whatever they thought was gonna happen, keep them that. And then we see that Ruby's courage, Ruby like saying, "Look, I'm not gonna interpret the world for you anymore. It's up to you guys." And then the brother wanting to be like, "Hey, I want to do this on my own." This is not a disability here. It's just a different way.
Yeah,
it's a different way. And then so you see them reconnect. They're going to the bars. They're hanging out with the other fishermen, and you see the mother laughing, and laughing with the other wives,
right.
and they're making sign jokes, or
yeah.
And I think that's the other thing that Coda. Now I'm not saying it's an agenda, but the other theme of the film is just like this whole idea that like being deaf is not like. Is not a problem. Like being deaf doesn't make you less than human, right? Where that's not as present in the French one, right? Like in the French one, is really focusing on like the girl, but not necessarily like as this idea of like what it means to be deaf. Coda, very much so, that's present in the story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But I think that brings up, I think the main question here is just, do you think this film deserves an Oscar nomination?
Yes,
I'm
so glad. I'm so glad you asked that question and not the question we asked, because Rolando and I talked briefly this morning, and he did mention something about it being nominated for Best Picture.
Yes.
So I want you to answer first.
Okay. So my answer did kind of change since I talked to you this morning, right? I was rewatching it. I was listening in, and it just made me relive it a little bit because I was cooking. But I will say this.
No wire hangers.
I think Coda. My argument this morning was that Coda in the Oscars, as of late, there's usually one feel-goodery film that gets nominated because it makes us feel happy. It makes us feel good. I argue that, Hidden Figures, for example, is one of those movies. Great film. Is it Oscar worthy? I don't know. I don't necessarily think so, but it did make me feel great when I was watching it, and I love some of the performances there. This film, for me, was that movie, right? I felt great watching it at the end of it. I don't know if it was Oscar material. However, as Eddie was rewatching it, and I'm like kind of watching bits and pieces of it too, kind of reliving it, I am going to say, you know what? I might be wrong. Yeah, it is a feel-goodery movie. I think it might be Oscar material. I think it's fine. I think it's good because it is kind of, not just is it wholesome, but they had some actual strong filmmaking techniques. Specifically, granted, it's copies of the French version. And yet somehow, some way, I still felt better watching the American one than the French.
Yeah. I have a question then for you. Define Oscar material.
I don't know what that means to me. It changes because I thought The Dark Knight should have been an Oscar-nominated film for Best Picture, but it wasn't. I don't know I feel like an Oscar-worthy film should be a film that is good, right? And by good, I mean like it should be like something that when you watch it, you come out saying it's just like, I not only enjoyed that, but I feel like, I don't know, I felt I learned something new about myself. I feel like I came out maybe understanding something about me or people around me that I didn't think about before. Okay. Strong performances, strong filmmaking, not necessarily excellent, right? But I think it has to be like a overall well-rounded film.
That's pretty okay. I get that. A lot of people think that Oscar films need to be important with a capital I or something, or like
which I
they
don't
need
stand
to be.
for that. Yeah.
I don't stand for that. They think it needs to be critical darlings, or some people think it should be blockbusters and like the audience favorites and stuff. And for me, what makes a film to be quote Oscar worthy is simply if it's either a basic drama or comedy, or if it's genre films, it should do what the limitations of that genre allows them to do, and just does it really, really well, and maybe even push those boundaries, right? So if it's a comedy, then yeah, like it should just be a really creatively done, unique, entertaining comedy. If it's a science fiction film, like all of it applies to the genre that it stays in. So I don't think any genre should ever be left out. Right. And that's the thing that sometimes either the Academy does itself or film people do. I'll give you a story, and I'm bringing up Ordinary People again. In 1980, Ordinary People won Best Picture, and it has ruined the reputation of the film because it won over Raging Bull. And because everybody's convinced that Raging Bull is a true film that's worthy of an Oscar, and not some film about, a bunch of Illinois people with problems.
No,
And that's bullshit. It's bullshit. But that's the thing. Like, it's not just, movies like fucking Raging Bull that deserve to get nominated or win the Oscar. A film like Ordinary People can win the Oscar and fucking deserve it too. Again, within that genre, what it did, it wasn't by any means an amazingly shot film, but it was well directed to an extent, and the performances were fucking fantastic, and it was a story that was never told and really needed to be told, and it was emotionally effective, and that's why it won Best Picture. So this is just an example again, right? I think Coda is probably the most family-friendly, real surprise, kind of tearjerker, like you said, feel-good sleeper hit of the year. I mean, according to Wikipedia, it had a box office revenue of only $1 million. But again, this is on Apple TV, so they don't share those numbers. We don't know how, if it's been financially successful or not.
It came out in theaters because you need to be in the theaters for like, I think 2 weeks to qualify. You have to have been screened at least 2 weeks at a theater.
There you go.
Right? But this was a distributed by Apple TV film. I also want to, we talked about this before, I think maybe a couple of weeks ago when the Oscar nominations came out about Hulu got an Oscar and Netflix. I just want to point out, it's like these films are not funded by Hulu. They're not funded. They're just distributed by them. So they're not really. It's not. Netflix does have its own production studio, and they do make their own films. I don't think the movies that are nominated by Netflix, that are. I think they're just distributed by Netflix. I don't think they're like actually Netflix originals. You know what I mean? Same thing with Hulu. Hulu was just a distributor for Nomadland. It's not a Hulu film. Like Hulu didn't put any money. They just distributed it. So, you know. I don't know. I don't think like Netflix or Hulu or even Apple deserve the credit of like, this is one of our films that won the Oscars. Just like, well, you guys didn't do anything. You guys just distributed it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, so I do think that it should be nominated for Best Picture. I actually think the Best Picture nominations are pretty well rounded. We got a musical in there, Nightmare Alley, a dark noir. You know, Licorice Pizza is another kind of feel good movie. I had some problems with it, but pretty great movie. Before we stop for today, was this needed?
Yeah, I think it was needed. I think the French one, outside of the fact it was French and I'd never heard of it, I think the American version took this fine French film and elevated it in a way that I was surprised when I finished the French film. I was just like, wow, the American one was just a higher form of this. And I guess it's, you know, it's not hard to do. It's a good idea, right? Like focusing a story on like the child of a deaf family who really depend on you and kind of like, you know, turning that into, you know, a drama.
Yeah, you know, it did make me think almost like a little of like Dances with Wolves. It's like, oh, the only way we could tell a story about deaf people is if our main character isn't deaf. Kind of like, oh, the only way we can make a movie about, you know, indigenous people is if it's told with a main character who's white. Like right. Hollywood loves that trope. Regardless, though, it works. And I think that this film was needed purely because of the authenticity and the amazing performances given by Daniel Durant, Troy Kotsur, and Marlee Matlin.
I want to come for you on this one though. I don't know if this movie. So I was gonna say I don't know if this movie is about deaf people solely. I think the reason they called it Coda is because this movie is about the child of a deaf adults. You know, of deaf adults.
Okay, what I'm trying to say more so is that it's like if we're gonna make a film, you know, that showcases what it is to be deaf and stuff. You know, why do we need to hear it through the story of a person who, like, you know, I guess it's just like that's how Hollywood thinks and operates and has always done when they make stories of the other, quote, other. Yeah. That's more so my point. Again, I'm not like trying to 100% come for this film because I did enjoy it, but it's just like fucking Hollywood doing it again. But what do you guys think? Have you seen Coda?
Did you know it was a remake?
Did you know it was a remake? Or are we just the ignorant ones here? Let us know your thoughts. Instagram at Remakes, Reboots, Revivals is where you can hit us up. Facebook, look for Remakes, Reboots, Revivals. We're also on YouTube. We're on Twitter at Remakes Podcast. You can email us, remakesrebootsrevivals@gmail.com, or you can call in and let your voice be heard. And that number is
862-248-2326. That's 862-248-2326.
And yeah, I guess that'll just about do it for today. This was a fun one, and definitely check out the movies, guys. Yeah, and yeah, it was really good. If you haven't seen, I know a lot of people are sitting on Coda, so I say go and watch it.
Oh yeah, no, Coda is definitely. I think it's under 2 hours. It's you get to watch it at home, which is just like what a treat, what a joy. Eat some homemade popcorn. I know, I'm poking fun at you, Nicole, here on this one.
Ew, homemade popcorn? Movie theater popcorn is way better.
No, it's always over salty and like oily. I prefer.
But that's how
popcorn.
You want it.
Nah, I am all about just like popcorn that's just air popped and it's just like nice and like maybe throw a little bit of salt, maybe a little bit of garlic powder.
Oh my gosh, okay, we need to end this here. On that note, stay unoriginal.